So, good afternoon, sir, and thank you for accepting my invitation for this interview on such short notice. First
Good
of all, I
afternoon.
would like to give you, I would like to know what organization you're working for so that we have a basic ground of information to work upon.
Okay, I am working with Bennett University. I'm faculty here in the Times School of Media.
And if I'm not wrong, you have worked as a sports journalist with certain websites,
E-
if I remember correctly.
yes, I have worked with lots of sports channels, newspapers, and magazines. To
Hmm.
name a few, I have been with the BBC in India, and I've worked with ESPN and Star Sports. I've also worked with Sports Illustrated India and number of channels like in India News X, CNN News 18, etc. And my primary reporting, in fact, there was in the area of sports. So, as a sports journalist, I have covered the games of Olympic sport and cricket mostly around the globe with reporting experience in more than 30 countries by now.
And how long have you been in this field of sports journalism?
Because I still write, and in fact, my
Yeah.
primary introduction is a sports journalist. I still consider myself a sports journalist. So you can count 2001 onwards. So it's almost 24 years now.
All right. So that means you may have that means you are kind of the right person for this interview as well because you might have seen I suppose you have seen the transition from digital to print and vice
Print
versa
to digital.
from print
Yeah.
to digital from from the very
Mm.
starting.
Yes, yes. In fact,
Uh,
I started with a newspaper in my career. Then the television boom happened in India. Then I worked and launched a number of news channels in India. And on that time, also worked with the sports channels later with the BBC. In fact, we worked very hard on multimedia and on the
hmm.
website and on the social media there. And later, of course, it has been all digital. In my last few years or so, whatever I've been writing mostly around the digital impressions of course, big time news organizations, but they are digital. So yes, the transition actually I've seen from print to television to digital now.
So, that's why I would like to know how has the rise of mobile betting applications reshaped or is reshaping the sports gambling industry? How has the shift panned out from a
I
journalistic
think
perspective?
the shift has been remarkable in couple of areas if you look at. Basically, what has happened is that with these mobile betting apps and where they are legalized, for example, where I am in India, betting still is not a legal per se, and people do various kind of what they call fantasy apps are there, which may be nothing more than betting, but yes, they are not. So the betting apps per se, the traditional betting apps, and now when they are on the digital, when they are mobile, it has made them very accessible, I think, and it's very easy for people to get into and experience these. Betting apps. That's one accessibility. The second one I think is now there is so much of data going into this because of these being apps and they can integrate big data right now. And if you can throw in AI, it's still getting even better. So it has integrated these betting apps into, in a way, everyday fan culture we can see. The industry has also shifted, like from physical bookmakers in olden days. In fact, there must be, I'm sure, in England and other places still there must be physical bookmakers also. But these in your pocket betting platforms have made it very accessible, very easy, and kind of all the time available for you.
And so, in your opinion, what role does convenience or in-home betting play in popularizing these applications? For example, they give you the facility to bet from the comfort of your home at the click of a finger. So, what role and how significant an impact does it have?
See, in fact, you can say one, it is game, and the second aspect, it has, I mean, the gamification of the game has also
Hmm.
happened in a way, or you can say the gamification of betting has happened. So it's become very easy. As I said earlier, it's very accessible. It is now also very easy with just a few taps. You can register on a betting app. You can deposit funds. You can browse the odds. You can place bets. You can do so many things, and it's so easy now. And so convenience, as you said, convenience plays a big part here. It becomes imagine that you have to go to a betting, places, physical places, and maybe contact bookies and whatnot, do place odds. That was a cumbersome process, and that was a time-taking process, and that also, of course, has been hugely successful, more so in Western sports. But now that it is in your pocket, it is convenient. With just a few taps, you can do so many things. So yes, I would say convenience has played a big role in popularity of these betting apps, which are mobile now.
What, and from a fan's perspective, what role, how has these applications affected fan engagement with the sport? Because now they have shifted from physical sport to a digital screen. How has this digital
So,
revolution
so,
impacted
so it's
fan
yeah,
engagement?
it's a very good question. In fact, a part of these answers and questions are also connected. One, fan engagement, I would say, is of course the fandom has become more gamified, as you may allow me to say. Fans would no longer just look for the outcome of the match, who won, who lost. They engage
Mhm.
with every play. Yeah, imagine, let's say, a game of cricket is happening, and somebody is not only looking at who is scoring how much runs and what happens in the match, what the result is, but somebody who's placing bets at every ball, and it's become so easy. Every delivery you can do that. So your engagement is there so much, and your fandom also is now experienced through this gamification. Whatever favorite player you have placed bets on that player. So this becomes very integrated. The fantasy integration has become a huge play here. So this way, fans are engaging more. If you can look at, once again, I'll give you some examples uh, from around. If you see, people browsing their phones during big leagues like the Indian Premier League in here in India, and also let's say the English Premier League football. A lot of them are actually not only watching the matches, they're also live on those fantasy and betting apps. So these micro stakes, don't have to always go for really huge numbers. You can bet for, a few cents also, if it is possible. And so that is making it, more engaging. The fans are engaging more with the sports, and they're engaging in a different way, not only as somebody who is a purveyor of sports, somebody who enjoys sports, connoisseur of good game. Of course, they are that also, but beyond that also somebody who's engaged in the fandom, engaged in the outcome, engaged in the fantasy through these betting apps.
Right. And what I would like to know, what are your thoughts on the introduction of and the advent of gadgets, for example, smartwatches and fitness trackers, and the data that they use. For example, they show live heart rates, fatigue levels, and whatnot. What are
So
your thoughts
these
on these applications and gadgets coming up in sport?
so I mean, these gadgets worn by the athletes, or you're asking for gadgets which common people would wear? I mean,
From an
because
athlete perspective, how
oh, from
how
an
how impactful is the data that they have
see, this
in
is
the site?
and this can be huge, and this has issues also. Why it is huge? Number one, I mean, if you have athlete data, like you said, you can have the heart rate, you can have the fatigue
Mm,
rate, you can have so many things. I mean, these days the athletes, in fact, they have all these things, and they go to their huge medical team that accompanies any game of sport these days, modern game that you see. But if that is also accessible to the public, then though fans can do so much with betting. I can get
mm,
to know that okay, this is Alcaraz versus Sinner match, and I see
mhm,
Sinner getting tired.
mm,
So who am I going to put more bets on? Of
mm,
course, maybe the person or the player who's looking more fitter and raring to go right now. I mean, that could be wrong, but that's an indicator. And also, and so many health, I would say, indicators that could be tracked. That is number one. Now throw in once again artificial intelligence here. And then suddenly you get to have everything. You packaged data is there for you to place your bets on. So this impact could be huge. But then I said it has issues also. And these issues are issues of privacy, issues of ethics which are involved. Why would a player's such data become public? Number one, does that unfairly also influence the betting and the odds? And would the companies who have these players, I mean, let's say the clubs who own these players for that season, would they be very happy in sharing those data, etc., etc., etc.? So this is huge, and
mm,
I'm giving an example which is outside of sport, but it was in
mm,
news yesterday. So when Putin visited the I mean, he was in Alaska, and they had a meeting with President Trump and the Putin's team, and so even Putin's body data, even his
mm,
I mean, excreta, they carried it back to Russia. There
mm,
was one news because they don't
mm,
want even that data to be available to. Of course, these are statesmen. You can say these are heads of state. They have the
mm,
right. But even sports person also, they have, I mean, so much rides on them. The entire industry rides on the performances. Don't so I mean, don't forget that. Of course, so many people are involved. The marketing is involved, the clubs, etc. But end of the day, it is the result of the match. It is how the match or how the games panned out that affects everything. So if those data and those data of which of athletes are made public, which are, I would consider them sacred, and of
mm,
course there's has to be huge debate on this. So there are issues about this. Of course, if your question is, will that impact the industry? It can impact in a huge way. The second question and the rider is, should that happen? I think one needs to think more on this issue.
mm. That brings me to another doubt that I wanted. What are some of the major ethical red flags or concerns that the industry is facing, and how is the industry preparing itself to for a better response when you look at the privacy issues or some of the major concerns that are being flagged because of the use of
I think the
technology?
biggest concern here is addiction. The biggest concern here, and let me give you an example from India. And here these betting apps don't call themselves betting apps. They're not betting apps legally.
Mm,
They're just sports fantasy apps like Dream
mm,
11 and whatnot. And you can see even a small time daily wager also, engaged in the games. The
mm,
popularity of the IPL is not only because people love it on TV. The popularity also has to do with the huge formal and informal, legal and illegal betting that goes with the game. And of course, illegal betting, we always see police raiding, and during IPL times, so many people gets arrested with multiple phones, wads of cash, whatnot. That's a different issue. And also here, as I said, everyone from let's say a small pawn shop owner, a rickshawala, to
mm,
maybe a CEO of a company also are engaged in
mm,
those fantasy sports.
mm,
And then when you look at the vulnerable section, the vulnerable who are in terms of finance, the vulnerable people who are in terms of, let's say, age, demography, youngsters, youth, they are getting addicted. So this is one biggest issue that one has to look at: the overexposure and addiction. Of course, there are privacy concerns that we just discussed. If
mm,
wearables, etc., and biometric data becomes available, there are huge privacy and ethical concerns over there. I think overexposure and advertising, maybe somewhat also integrity of sport. Also, one has to look at it very
mm,
closely. There is a very fine line which which divides integrity here. So these are
mm.
some of the issues that could pose regulatory challenges when these mobile applications become more and more pervasive.
Right. And from a journalism or journalistic standpoint, how have these technologies impacted sports journalism and the way you used to cover certain stories or the overall sports journalism industry? What impact has it had on journalists per se?
Uh, I would give you one impact that is definitely there, which is the kind of stories that are getting covered. Okay, of course, the match reports are there, of course, the interviews are there, of course, the players and all those. One extra addendum that has happened once again in a market like India where betting is not legal is, but yes, these fantasy apps are. So is one thing that has changed is you get kind of stories like what is the likely India 11, or let's say like likely RCB 11 versus likely Chennai
Mm,
Super Kings 11. Now, this kind of stories, likely stories, of course, when you look at traditional journalism, we also used to say, okay, the match is happening day after tomorrow. This is the team that might play, but
mm,
uh, but that was only from the pure perspective of the game. Right now, because the common public, they want to place, their odds on, okay, which
mm,
team they have to pick a team of 11 in these fantasy games. There are various formats, so they would like to know whether this player is available or not. So these kind of reports, and then reports which could help affect the match result, like what is the pitch going to be like, what are the weather conditions, what has the ground to do, what kind of scores happen. Of course, I'm quoting these only from the game of
Mm,
cricket.
mm,
Different data sets are available for different games according to their own. But so these kind of reports have become very popular, most on the digital. On the digital, in fact, these reports become almost the most read on those days also. So, which
mm,
was very, unthinkable, let's say 15
mm,
years ago, 20 years ago. So, yes, sports journalism is also impacted. And in places where betting is legalized, you will always have reports about odds and the betting lines, how
mm.
the odds have moved, etc., etc. But those are, I would say, more in the traditional aspect. But in places like India, where I do mention these apps, I think these are some of the new elements of sports journalism that have cropped up.
And what is finally, what is the future? What does the future hold for for traditional brick and mortar gambling industries, gambling outlets? Are they facing significant challenges? A challenge that may even in sometime in the future replace or close down physical betting shops, or they both can coexist at the same time, physical as
I
well as
think they
digital.
I think they will exist at least for the some time, because
Mm,
they are also strong. But one of the challenges that they face when compared with this digital in your pocket apps is the accessibility. This is huge. As I gave an example earlier, one thing is to take a train and go to
mm,
that physical place and place the odds, and the other thing is to just scroll your mobile and just do
mm,
on a few taps. So
mm,
this accessibility is going to challenge
mm,
the traditional kind of betting. Also, time constraints are there. Cash is another issue. I mean, digital, it's easy to do
mm,
digital than cash. And so,
mm.
yeah, these are some of the issues which I think the traditional betting industry will face.
Thank you so much, sir, for this interview. Thank you. That's it.
Okay.